Okay, so Chief, first of all, let's talk about the most recent control burn in Upper Bidwell Park, the one that went from Horseshoe Lake down to the entrance of the park. Can you tell me about how that project was decided on and planned out? And also tell me about how that could have sort of helped protect the city of Chico during the park fire.
So that fire was the second fire that we did this spring. The first one was the airport. And then we did the burn the next week for the upper park between just east of Horseshoe Lake all the way back to the entrance of the park. And we do that in particular for two reasons. One is an ecological, from a Parks Department standpoint, is getting rid of some of that invasive species like the star thistle, getting it out there. And there are certain criteria in terms of heat that is required to get rid of them. So they try to maintain or try to contain that thistle. And from a firefighting standpoint, it creates a nice buffer for us in light flashy fuels, where if a fire were to push up, either coming to the west or were to come from the south, or I'm sorry, come from the east and then from the south, it creates that buffer that allows the fire to burn out. And we actually experienced that in, I think it was 2022, the first park fire we had. It burned up on that flank, it burned up to that burn scar, and we didn't have to devote as many resources to maintain that, so that it didn't spread any further. And if we look at the terrain there, that grassy area, the fuels there are light and flashy, and then they go across into the county area, which is again a continuation of that light flashy fuel that can move rapidly. So we're really cognizant of trying to make sure that that gets burned as frequently as we can, year in and year out. The vegetation fuels management plan has other projects that have been identified in that. And then there is a prescribed burn plan that identifies the type of preparation that goes into it, the acreage size of the potential burn, some of the challenges, what kind of fuels are in there. And again, that will help us dictate what kind of preparation we have to do in order to limit that fire from escaping from what would be our control areas. So there are a number of those, and a lot of the determination is not only focused on Upper Bidwell Park, but we've got a multitude of greenways, creeks, and other city properties that we have to manage as well. And I'll use Lindo Channel as an example, that there are areas in Lindo Channel that have a tremendous amount of fuel that needs to be mitigated, and then ensure that fires don't encroach on the adjacent homes, businesses, and so forth. So we're really mindful that we have a lot of projects that need to be done, and that it's inconceivable for us to get to all those burns. So we systematically look at it from year to year, and we work really closely with the Parks Department. And there are a lot of different partners we engage when we're doing a large burn, such as the Upper Park burns that we've done. And some of those partners, we also have to ensure that we have capability of pulling them in to assist with those burns, whether it's PG&E, the conservation folks, and other key partners that help us with the plan and help us maintain the lines and so forth.
Okay, so let's talk about, you had 7 projects that were kind of in discussions as possible future control burns. One of them is right in the footprint of where the park fire burned, but you're telling me that it was so narrow that had that project been done the way that the ember spread from the park fire, there's no way that that particular project would have contained those flames.
I'm happy to share the screen with you if I can figure this out, but I may not be able to. I don't think I have the rights to share. Wait a minute, maybe I do.
And you don't want that to go on air anyways, right?
Oh, okay, that's fine. So yes, that section is called Project Maps Power Lines Unit number one, or number one unit. And it's roughly about 400 at the widest area of that is about 400 or so feet. But there's quite a bit of distance between where the car was and then the fuels that were ignited across the south side of that road. So it would have ember cast well beyond that based on the winds and the projections of what kind of ember casting would have been spotting across. If we had burned it anyways, it is unlikely that we would have contained it regardless. And also, we would have, as I suggested in a previous interview, we would have had to have been omnipresent to know that we could have burned that one and it would have saved the park. That's an absurd assertion, because there are multitude of places that we can potentially burn that would be advantageous for us. And again, in this particular burn plan is really just a template for what we would need to do in order to get it prepped. It is not a priority list in terms of we will do this plan at any given time. We're looking at different variables that would affect that. So the notion that we would have magically picked this one is absurd on its face.
Right, and as you had mentioned, when you and I were speaking earlier, when it comes to getting the ball rolling on a project like this, you say it's not quite as simple as the ones around the airport, the one downhill from Horseshoe. That is just grass, and it's not quite as easy when you're dealing with the slope, with rougher terrain. You have to take a lot of things into consideration for a burn like that, right?
That is absolutely accurate. And in fact, this particular place, there are trails that on the north side that, well, it's the lower trail that we would have had to have expanded in terms of ensuring that the fuels leading up to it and on the other side of the trail would have had to have been enhanced, and that is a big chore to do. So it's not a quick, easy, we're going to burn it proposition. We have to do a lot of prep work to make sure that we don't let it escape from the containment lines that we have established. We have to have favorable winds, and part of that is also that we can't have winds that are too strong that would push them over those lines, no matter what we had done to prep. So we're really cautious about how we go about this, and we want to ensure we have everything in order. There are other things that we have to do, like the air quality permit. And this happened with this spring with the burnout at the airport. We had the burn set up. We had people out there all ready to go, and we got denied the burn because the winds would have pushed the smoke back into the city. So we had to reschedule for the next day. And so logistically, that is a massive thing that we have to do. This one would have been exponentially more complex, because we would have wanted more resources available to ensure we could contain it within that 9 acres.
Can I ask you, so far it's been a week, 8 days now since this fire's been burning. Is there anything that you've learned about just studying how this fire, after it started, how it spread, anything that you've learned or taken away from it that you could implement in planning in future years?
Oh, I think we're going to need to sit down and actually go through that as an after action. So at this juncture, I don't want to presuppose that there are things catastrophically or substantively that we would change. What I will say is it is a remarkable thing to watch how we can, in California, can mobilize thousands upon thousands of personnel that contribute to the success of getting a large fire like this contained and mitigated and ultimately put under control and put it out. it's a testament to the process that California has adopted in the master mutual aid. And I'm proud to say that our department is actively engaged in that year in and year out. We send a lot of resources out, and that in and of itself allows us to bring back a lot of expertise from folks getting out there and participating on large campaign fires where they get the experience of seeing different fire behavior, tactics, strategies, things of that nature that are very helpful for us when we're fighting our own fires in this particular case. Unfortunately, it did not, the fire moved so quickly, it got ahead of us. What I will say too is we could do all the prep work, all of the mitigation work that we could. And there is always going to be a element of risk that exists in any community that has a park of this size, with the fuels that it has. We just cannot mitigate every risk. We can only minimize it to the extent that we have the ability to do so.
You talked about mutual aid and, regarding Chico Fire Department, how much of your team is kind of in wildland firefighting mode versus how much of your team is still in place to protect the city of Chico for house fires and 911 calls?
Well, the first day we, as part of the mutual, our QAFRA agreement, which is our Chico urban area fire response plan, we did dedicate a lot of resources on the initial response to this. And in this particular case, we sent 4 of our engines, which effectively left the tiller truck in the city, battalion chief, and then we had an off-duty battalion chief came in as well. We now have 3 engines on there. We were able to get one back once they went to the state fire. So we were able to get a lot of people come in and staff up engines, and we were able to get close to our minimum staffing. But it's challenging. It's a summertime and people are vacationing and so forth.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of people came in and mustered, were able to muster staffing 4 engines or 3 engines in a truck that night. And I covered the duty for the battalion chief.
How is everybody doing on your team when it comes to just morale, the emotional toll of having to deal with a crisis like this that's here? It started in our city, it's in our backyard.
I think it's like everything else. We have people that our folks are so dedicated to the city that they just put their head down, they do the work. In fact, I will say we thought we had the fire contained, and then once it got up to the ridge, it was the winds were so strong that it just kept continue to push. And so we take a lot of pride in what we do. And so our folks, because they live here, most of them live in the town or around the town. This is their hometown and they want to be here to help. We had we demobilized our OES engine and brought that crew back. We had an individual who was on a single resource deployment, and he emergency demob so they could get back here. And people were canceling vacations and so forth so that they can ensure that we have the protection of the city, and then still we're able to have units available for the fire itself.
Okay. I think that's it. Is there anything I didn't ask you about that you want to clarify and make sure people understand?
Yeah, I do actually. So one of the issues that I'm running into when we're talking about prescribed burns, it's a powerful tool, and I don't want to in any way diminish that. But there are several major tools that we have at our disposal that all need to be taken into account when we're looking at a comprehensive and global way of mitigating some of the risks in the park and lower park. So there are 2 things I want to touch on. One is we use goats really effectively for that. And so that's one tool, enhancing some of the potential breaks that we have that we could enhance. But all of these come with trade-offs. And so we have a community that loves its parks. there are strong feelings about what we should and shouldn't do. So we have to engage our community when we're looking at some of these mitigation tools to include prescribed burns, man-made breaks within the park, use of goats. Those are probably not quite as controversial, but still they're part of the equation. Not only that, remember, the park is only one part of what the city manages, and the city manages about 6,500 acres of open space. And we have some very critical areas that we want to get ahead of and ensure that we're working towards good mitigation in a thoughtful way. And in all candor, one of the concerns that I've had and I've expressed from the time we were prohibited to manage the homeless population and encampments in critical areas was the limitation that was put on us by the judge and the court with respect to limiting our ability to move encampments out of those critical areas. Lindo Channel is a perfect example of one, and when the magistrate judge came through to do the evaluation before the settlement agreement was made, we were definitively told we can't do anything about this. And so when we talk about the upper park, we sort of forget the fact that there are areas in our community that people are rightfully concerned about the activities that are going on in our waterways. And when you have human activity, there is a causal effect on increased fire activity as well. So I think it's important to understand there's a bigger picture than just this one space that's been pointed out that could have potentially theoretically stopped the fire. And that's a misnomer that I think needs to be put to bed right now.
So we know that the city's moving forward in terms of that case getting basically the Warren deal thrown out essentially in light of the Supreme Court decision. If that happens, if and when that happens, would you say Lindo Channel is top of your list for the next?
From my vantage point, absolutely, it'd be one of the top, all the creek beds and especially the ones that have quite a bit of volatile and receptive fuels. So I would absolutely encourage that. But there are other priorities as well, and that's something for the city manager and the council members to work on as to what priorities they want to focus on.